Thomas!
What the fuck? Are you fucking kidding me? Stopping my music?
You have to stop blasting this music. John and I just can't get anything done around here.
Oh my god. First of all, don't call me by my fucking real name, you bitch. It's fucking XX Brutal Swag 69XX. How many times? How many times, Hannah? And guess what? I know that you're the fucking one that stole my Xbox 360, Petey.
Oh my god, I would not take that if you paid me, which you don't. You don't pay for anything.
I paid for this album.
That's John's Spotify account.
Fuck you! You won't let me have anything! Fuck you! I paid... Fuck you! What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for a review of album number 5 by Of Mice and Men. This one is called Defy. Now this is their first album without one of their founding members, Austin Carlile. He did unclean vocals in the band, and he was definitely a big part of their DNA. Now with that backbone, so to speak, being gone at this point, what do we have left? We have Aaron Pauley, who was a big part of this band. He's someone who stepped up to the plate and is now handling unclean and clean vocals, and it seems like maybe there's a bit too much on his shoulders. Now with Of Mice and Men, it's been a tricky relationship for me because I appreciate that there is some core talent there and some work that goes into their music. It's just that the way that they go about actually making and executing their albums, it never really came across and struck me as anything all that new or refreshing or anything that I needed to get excited about. And their last album, Cold World, that came out in 2016, the last one that featured Austin Carlile on it, that was actually the first album that I liked from the band. So to me, it kind of sucked that he departed right after, but I understand that there were a myriad of health reasons that Austin had to go, and I really do feel for him. A track like Pain on Cold World really shows what he deals with on a daily basis with his chronic conditions. So this new album, Defy, I didn't have the highest of expectations, especially after hearing the lead single. I thought it was very bland, generic, and that's a problem that I've had with them in the past. And even though Cold World had a lot of those elements that were very generic, I liked the kind of 2000s Linkin Park-ish sound that many of the tracks had. It did have that edge to them. They didn't feel like they were necessarily copying them. It just, you could tell that they were influenced by that time in music. And this time, I would say that they're dipping their toes back into more of like a metalcore and just a more aggressive sound. Less cleans. I was expecting maybe like an all-clean album, but that's not the case whatsoever. There's plenty of screams from Aaron Pauley. It's just that here, the way he goes about rotating back and forth, something just feels a bit off. He's not as good of a screamer, not by any means, and that's not a slight to him. It's a big role to fill, especially when Austin Carlile has left your band. So I'm not necessarily slamming them there. It's just the execution of the lyrics and the overall concept of this record. I mean, it's called Defy, and it's pretty much just someone being like, hey, here's my rebel fist, I'm gonna raise it up in the air, and they keep it there for like the whole album. There's a certain mindset that I just can't get on board with in the world of metalcore music, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they always feel like they're overcoming something, but not just in a normal everyday sense. It's just like, oh, it's an epic over-the-top sense. And understand that music is dramatized, obviously. That's why we like it a lot of times, because it's an escape from reality. But here, I just feel like it's been fed to us so many times by so many bands at this point that it's fine. It's not the worst thing ever. You're not really just going to reject it if somebody is spoon-feeding you, but at the same time, you're not necessarily loving it. And that's how I feel about this material here. I mean, there's much worse stuff out there that I can complain about in the world. But many of these songs, like, I don't know, How Will You Live, and then Instincts, and especially the title track, Defy, it's just so bland. I defy, and all these other just very blanket statements that could talk about a lot of different things, and I get the appeal, I guess, especially if you're in your teenage years, but even so, there's much more aggressive and emo and other things that you could lean towards, but I get it if it's your cup of tea. Of Mice and Men surprised me by covering a Pink Floyd song called Money on this album. I'm definitely a fan of the original track, but I had no idea as to why this ended up here, but I guess if the band enjoys playing the song and they're big Pink Floyd fans, then totally. Is it a great cover? No, but it's not a bad one either, and I think it's one of the better songs here. It actually has some nice guitars on it. I like the way that he kind of channeled the inner anger that maybe didn't flare up quite as much on the Pink Floyd track because it was woven into the song. You knew that the anger was there, even if it wasn't just the harshest vocals or screamed vocals or anything like that. But I think they use a little bit more force, obviously, on this track, and it comes across just fine. There's another track that I like here called Sunflower. That's track number 4, and it's one that once again reminds me of more like Cold World type material because it sounds kind of mid-2000s-ish to me. Reminds me of a band called 10 Years, and that's not a bad comparison whatsoever. I really like the vocal approach for On the Inside. This one definitely sees some conflict that's going on internally, not exactly new waters that we're treading in here, but still they find a way to make it sound kind of fresh. And then on the track Vertigo, I do like the unclean screamed vocals here. It's something that grabs your attention, and the guitar tones here just feel a bit less gimmicky because so many of these are just sterilized. They're exactly what you would see coming from a mile away. Sure, there's a few cool solos that pop up here and there on the album, but overall, this one presents itself in a different way. It stands out. But then we go back to the genericism and we see something like Unbreakable, which you can guess by the title. He's saying, I'm unbreakable, I'm invincible, you can't break me down. And then we go through Warzone, which is extremely repetitive, and that one is just formulaic to a T. And we close out on one that does try to be a bit more earnest, but it comes across kind of cheesy and predictable. If We Were Ghosts, I can appreciate what it's trying to do, but like I said, at this point, for me, I'm listening to this album and it's just like, I've got better things to listen to, I'm sorry. Overall, this is a pretty forgettable effort. I can understand why some would like it, but at the same time, I don't think that this is going to be topping your year-end list, even if you're into metalcore and this style of music. It's just very regurgitated, very formulaic stuff, and I can't say that I'm really inclined to it whatsoever, but at the same time, maybe there's a bit of charm there. I'm gonna give this thing a 2 out of 5 for the 5th album by Of Mice and Men, Defy. What do you guys think, though? Of course, this is all just my opinion. Sound off yours in the comments section down below, and please drop a like on the video while you're here. If you're able to help support me on Patreon, it's this annotation over in the corner. It really does help the videos keep coming on both channels on a monthly basis. If you would like to see another Of Mice and Men review, tap right here, or another recent rock review I did on the channel, tap right over here. All of my social medias can be found linked in the description down below, and other than that, I'll see you very soon right here on ARTV.